For as long as the Galactic Concord remembered, humanity had been an anomaly. Among the hundreds of species spread across the cosmos, each had carved its niche, some in war, others in science, some in art or trade. Yet humans were different. They were not the fastest, the strongest, or the most technologically advanced species. But when humanity entered the galactic stage, they didn't just survive, they thrived. No matter the battlefield, the trade war, or the political arena, humanity always emerged victorious. Their adaptability was feared, their endurance legendary, and their sheer tenacity unmatched. This, of course, puzzled everyone. Dr. 14 Rack, a leading zoologist of the Galactic Zoological Institute, had dedicated his life to understanding the evolutionary paths of different species. His research on predator-prey dynamics, survival mechanisms, and cultural evolution had won him awards and recognition across the stars. Yet the question of humanity eluded even him. It wasn't just curiosity driving him now, it was an obsession. As 14 Rack gazed through the observation window of his research vessel, the Narlithian Chronicle, at the Earth spinning below, his compound eyes glittered with determination. "They defy every natural law," he murmured to his assistant, an eager young Cephalian named Tarek. "Every model suggests they should have plateaued millennia ago," 14 Rack continued, his voice low and full of frustration. "Instead, they are advancing faster than any species recorded. They've gone from bronze tools to interstellar travel in a mere flicker of time. It is unnatural." Tarek adjusted the control panel nervously, his tentacles twitching. "Perhaps the humans are simply lucky?" he suggested, though even he knew it was a weak theory. Luck didn't win wars, terraform planets, or outwit civilizations that had been spacefaring for millennia. "No," 14 Rack said firmly. "Luck is not enough. There is something about them, something fundamental. And I intend to find out what it is." 14 Rack's obsession with humanity had begun decades earlier, during the infamous Deneb conflict. A coalition of 5 advanced species had clashed with humanity over the rich resource deposits in the Deneb system. On paper, the coalition should have crushed the upstart humans within weeks. But that didn't happen. Instead, humanity dragged the conflict into a grueling 2-year war. They adapted to every strategy, every tactic. When their ships were outgunned, they built faster ones. When their ground forces were outnumbered, they dug trenches, set traps, and fought tooth and nail until they gained the upper hand. By the end of the war, the coalition was in shambles and humanity stood victorious. 14 Rack had watched the conflict unfold in disbelief. The humans weren't supposed to win, not against such overwhelming odds. Yet they had. And now, decades later, their influence stretched across the galaxy like vines overtaking a garden. That was why he was here, above Earth. 14 Rack had spent years crafting a research plan, meticulously designing experiments and observations. He would study humanity's biology, their culture, their history, every aspect of their existence. He would leave no stone unturned. "Their biosignatures are so chaotic," Tarek said, breaking the silence. He was analyzing human DNA samples 14 Rack had acquired through less than legal means. "Their genetic code is riddled with redundancies, mutations, and, by the stars, this should not work. Their bodies are horribly inefficient." 14 Rack leaned over the terminal, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "And yet it does work," he said. "Humans are remarkably resilient for a species with so many flaws. The question is, why?" The first step in 14 Rack's study was an infiltration mission. The Narlithian Chronicle descended into Earth's atmosphere under the guise of a meteorological satellite, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to human sensors. 14 Rack's team had prepared a series of remote drones, designed to collect data discreetly from various human settlements. The drones were sleek, spider-like machines, equipped with sensors to analyze everything from human movement to environmental interaction. 14 Rack deployed them into cities, forests, and even oceans, eager to catalog the intricacies of human behavior. Tarek monitored the feeds as the drones went to work. On one screen, humans crowded into a bustling metropolis, their movements frantic and disorganized. On another, a group of humans braved a snowstorm, hauling supplies across frozen terrain. On yet another, a lone human swam in open water, defying currents and predators alike. "They're unpredictable," Tarek remarked. "Every other species follows patterns, survival instincts, optimized for their environment. But humans? They act on, what, emotion? Impulse?" "Precisely," 14 Rack said, his mandibles clicking with excitement. "They are not constrained by logic or reason. They adapt because they are chaotic. Their unpredictability is their greatest weapon." As the days passed, 14 Rack's observations grew more perplexing. Humans weren't just adaptable, they were relentless. He watched as a farmer in a rural area worked tirelessly to till soil that barely seemed fertile. His hands blistered and his back bent, yet he smiled as he worked. In a city, he saw a human artist painting a massive mural on the side of a building, their movements feverish and passionate, creating beauty for no practical reason. And then there were the moments of extraordinary defiance. A drone captured footage of a human firefighter charging into a burning building, their protective suit barely adequate for the task. The fire roared like an angry beast, yet the human pressed on, emerging moments later with a child cradled in their arms. Why would they risk themselves like that? Tarek asked, genuinely baffled. That action had no survival benefit. Because they value something beyond survival, 14 Rack said, his voice tinged with awe. Humans are not driven solely by instinct. They are driven by ideals. Duty. Well, even if it defies logic. This revelation shook 14 Rack to his core. Most species he had studied were pragmatic, operating within the bounds of what was necessary to survive. Humans, however, seemed to transcend those bounds, acting on principles that couldn't be quantified or explained. But the most shocking discovery came when 14 Rack delved into human history. Using the drones to access archives and databases, he unearthed a staggering record of conflict, innovation, and resilience. They've been through so much, Tarek said, scrolling through accounts of wars, plagues, natural disasters, and famines. How are they even still alive? Because they refuse to die, 14 Rack said. He pointed to a particular historical record, detailing humanity's response to a devastating pandemic centuries earlier. Look at this. Faced with annihilation, they worked together, shared knowledge, developed cures, rebuilt. Their entire history is a testament to their refusal to give up. He turned to another record, this one detailing humanity's journey into space. When their own planet couldn't support them, they reached for the stars. They didn't wait for their environment to change. They changed themselves. One night, as Earth's moon cast a pale glow over the ship, 14 Rack sat alone in the observation deck, staring down at the planet. He felt a strange mix of admiration and fear. Humanity was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They are chaos incarnate, he murmured. But in that chaos lies their strength. They are not bound by limitations, not even their own. They are unstoppable. His claws tapped nervously on the console. The Galactic Concord had always viewed humanity with suspicion, but 14 Rack now realized that suspicion was justified. If humanity continued to grow, to adapt, there would come a day when no power in the galaxy could challenge them. And as much as 14 Rack respected humanity, he also understood the danger they posed. The galaxy wasn't ready for a species like this. But whether the galaxy liked it or not, humanity was here to stay. The Narlithian Chronicle hovered in low orbit, cloaked from detection as 14 Rack and Tarek reviewed the influx of data from their drones. 14 Rack paced across the observation deck, his thoughts racing as the various feeds displayed humanity's inconceivable adaptability. The more they uncovered, the less sense it made. Each time 14 Rack thought he had identified a singular key to humanity's dominance, new evidence emerged to contradict it. How can a species be so disorganized and yet achieve so much? 14 Rack muttered, frustration evident in the way his mandibles clicked against each other. It's not just their disorganization, Tarek replied, his tentacles working feverishly at his console. Look at this. On the screen, one drone's feed showed a sprawling forest in the Amazon basin. A small group of humans trekked through the dense undergrowth, their machetes cutting paths where none had existed. Despite the hostile terrain, they moved with purpose, collaborating seamlessly despite their lack of direct communication. When one stumbled, the others helped them up. When they encountered a particularly large obstacle, such as a fallen tree, they worked as a unit to clear the path. That's not what surprises me, Tarek continued. It's what happens next. The drone sensors registered changes in the human's biometrics, heart rates elevated but not panicked, movements coordinated but not calculated. They encountered an apex predator, a jaguar prowling the shadows of the forest. The humans stopped, seemingly unfazed, and began to communicate in hushed tones. Within moments they had formed a plan. One human circled wide, drawing the jaguar's attention, while the others prepared rudimentary tools, nothing more than sharpened sticks. What are they doing? 14 Rack asked, leaning closer to the screen. Improvising, Tarek said, his voice tinged with disbelief. In a flash, the humans executed their plan. The jaguar lunged only to find itself outmaneuvered. The humans worked in perfect harmony, driving the predator back with their makeshift weapons. They didn't kill it. Instead, they forced it to retreat, preserving their energy and resources while asserting dominance over the situation. 14 Rack straightened, his eyes narrowing. They calculate risks instinctively. No other species does this at such a complex level. Most would flee or fight to the death. But these humans? He trailed off, his thoughts racing. Later that evening, Tarek approached 14 Rack hesitantly. There's something else. I wasn't sure if I should bring it up, but... Speak, 14 Rack said, though his focus remained on the data streaming across his console. I've been analyzing their historical archives, Tarek said, his tentacles twitching nervously. Specifically their genetic history. It's unusual. 14 Rack turned to him intrigued. Unusual how? Humans exhibit an extraordinary degree of genetic variability, Tarek explained. Their population has survived multiple genetic bottlenecks, events that should have wiped them out entirely. Yet, not only did they survive but they thrived afterward. It's as though every crisis made them stronger. 14 Rack's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Genetic bottlenecks. That would explain their adaptability. They are a species forged by disaster. Yes, but there's more, Tarek said, bringing up a detailed genetic model. Their DNA is riddled with mutations, many of which would be lethal in other species. Yet in humans, these mutations often lead to beneficial traits. Enhanced immunity, higher cognitive function, even resilience to environmental extremes. It's as though their very genome is designed for chaos. 14 Rack studied the model in silence. He had analyzed countless species over his long career, from the frigid, methodical Krexer to the flame-dwelling Andarans. But no species had ever displayed such an intricate balance between fragility and strength. They're not designed for chaos, 14 Rack said finally. They are chaos. A living paradox. As the days stretched into weeks, 14 Rack's drones began uncovering more disturbing truths about humanity. In a remote Arctic outpost, the drones observed humans operating in temperatures that would kill most sentient species within minutes. Despite the harsh conditions, they not only survived but thrived, constructing advanced research stations and mining operations. Look at this, 14 Rack said, pointing to the footage. They adapt their environment to suit them, not the other way around. Most species evolve to fit their habitat. Humans reshape their habitats entirely. Is that not arrogance? Tarek asked, his voice tinged with unease. It is, 14 Rack admitted. But it works. The Arctic drone transmitted another curious interaction. A human scientist slipped and fell into freezing water, her body temperature dropping rapidly. The other humans reacted immediately, pulling her out and initiating emergency procedures. Within minutes, they had stabilized her condition. They are not just resilient individually, 14 Rack observed. They amplify their resilience through cooperation. Alone they are vulnerable. Together they are unstoppable. It wasn't just physical adaptability that amazed 14 Rack, it was their mental capacity. One drone had infiltrated a human educational facility, capturing footage of children solving complex problems through experimentation and trial and error. They learned through failure, Tarek said, astonished. Most species avoid failure at all costs, yet humans embrace it as a stepping stone to success. Failure is not an end for them, 14 Rack said, his voice low with awe. It is merely a part of the process. This is why they innovate so rapidly. Where other species see obstacles, humans see opportunities. Despite these revelations, one question still gnawed at 14 Rack. Why were humans so drawn to conflict? Every historical record, every cultural artifact, and every interaction the drones observed pointed to a species that thrived on struggle. Wars, rivalries, even competitive sports, humans seemed to need conflict as much as they needed air or water. It doesn't make sense, 14 Rack said, pacing again. Conflict weakens most species. It depletes resources, divides populations and slows progress. Yet for humans, conflict seems to strengthen them. Why? Perhaps it's not the conflict itself, Tarek suggested tentatively. Perhaps it's the resolution. Humans seem to grow stronger not because of the wars they fight, but because of the challenges they overcome. 14 Rack stopped pacing, his eyes narrowing in thought. So their power comes not from destruction but from rebuilding. From rising after every fall. He turned to the observation window, staring down at Earth with a newfound respect. They are not merely survivors. They are phoenixes, born anew from the ashes of their own destruction. As the second phase of their study drew to a close, 14 Rack realized the implications of his findings. Humanity's strength was not in their technology, their biology, or even their culture. It was in their refusal to accept defeat, in their relentless drive to grow, adapt, and evolve. They are more than a species, 14 Rack said quietly. They are a force of nature. And the galaxy will never be the same. Turek shuddered at the weight of those words, understanding the unspoken truth behind them. Humanity wasn't just powerful, they were inevitable. The Narlithian Chronicle remained in orbit, its sensors ceaselessly gathering data as the drones delved deeper into Earth's society. 14 Rack and Turek had uncovered remarkable insights into humanity's adaptability, cooperation, and chaotic brilliance. Yet, as they continued their study, another layer began to emerge, something far more subtle and dangerous than raw resilience or adaptability. 14 Rack had been reviewing a trove of human communications intercepted from Earth's global networks. At first, he had dismissed the idea that a species so dependent on digital technology could maintain any true advantage. But as the patterns became clearer, he realized there was an invisible force binding humanity together, an intricate web of information, culture, and shared ideals. It's not just their biology or history, 14 Rack muttered, his mandibles clicking rhythmically. It's their interconnectedness. They're not a collection of individuals. They're a collective mind. Turek looked up from his console, startled. You mean a hive mind? Like the Dralic swarm? No, 14 Rack replied, shaking his head. Hive minds are rigid, inflexible. Humanity's hive is something else entirely. It's fluid, decentralized, but no less coordinated. They call it the Internet? Turek blinked his wide eyes. The Internet? That vast, chaotic network of information? Yes, 14 Rack said, pulling up a holographic display of human digital infrastructure. It's chaotic, but within that chaos lies a profound strength. Every human, no matter where they are, can access this network. They share knowledge, collaborate, and build upon one another's ideas in real time. This is how they innovate so rapidly. They're not just connected biologically or socially, they're connected intellectually. To test his theory, 14 Rack directed one of the drones to infiltrate a human research facility. The target was an aerospace laboratory where a team of engineers was developing a new propulsion system. The facility was well guarded, but the drone's cloaking systems and advanced infiltration algorithms made it undetectable. The footage that came back was extraordinary. The engineers were working on a problem involving faster-than-light travel, a feat most galactic species had only achieved after centuries of meticulous research. Yet these humans, with their rudimentary technology, were on the brink of a breakthrough. They're using their network, Turek noted, pointing to the screens. Look, that one just pulled up research from another lab halfway across the planet. And that one is communicating with an orbital station in real time. It's a decentralized intelligence, 14 Rack said, his voice tinged with awe. No single human holds all the answers, but collectively they can solve almost any problem. And the more complex the problem, the stronger their network becomes. As they watched, the lead engineer, a young woman with sharp eyes and calloused hands, stood back from her workstation and spoke to the team. The drone's audio sensors picked up her words. We're close, she said. But we're missing something. I'm uploading the latest data to the open source network. Let's see if anyone out there can crack it. 14 Rack froze. Did she just say, open source? Turek nodded. She's sharing her research with the entire planet. Anyone with the knowledge or insight can contribute. 14 Rack sank into his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. In most advanced civilizations, knowledge was tightly controlled, guarded as a resource to be hoarded. But humans shared. They turned competition into collaboration, allowing ideas to evolve at a pace no centralized system could match. As the weeks passed, the drones uncovered more examples of humanity's collective power. In one corner of the world, farmers used satellite data to optimize crop yields, while in another, doctors consulted with colleagues on the other side of the planet to develop life-saving treatments. Artists from distant cultures collaborated on projects that blended their traditions into something entirely new. And then there was their response to crises. A massive hurricane struck the eastern coast of one of Earth's continents, leaving destruction in its wake. 14 Rack watched as humans mobilized on an unprecedented scale. Aid workers, volunteers, and military personnel coordinated efforts to evacuate survivors, distribute supplies, and begin rebuilding. How are they doing this? Turek asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. This level of coordination should take weeks to organize. They're using their network, 14 Rack replied, pointing to a screen displaying human social media platforms. Look at how information spreads. They're organizing themselves, pooling resources and solving problems in real time. Turek studied the data feed, his tentacles twitching. But this is disorderly. There's no central authority. No command structure. Exactly, 14 Rack said. And that's why it works. They don't need orders, they act on shared goals and values. Their chaos becomes order when the situation demands it. The more 14 Rack observed, the more he realized that humanity's strength wasn't just in their biology, their adaptability, or even their intelligence. It was in their ability to unite. They weren't a species defined by individual prowess, but by the bonds they forged with one another. This unity extended beyond their own species. 14 Rack was stunned to discover how humans had integrated other Earth species into their ecosystems. Domesticated animals, cultivated plants, and even symbiotic microorganisms played a role in humanity's rise. They had turned survival into a cooperative effort, enlisting the help of countless other life forms along the way. Do you see it now? 14 Rack asked Turek one evening as they reviewed the data. See what? Why they're so powerful, 14 Rack said, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. They're not just a species. They're an ecosystem, a living, breathing network of connections. And those connections extend far beyond themselves. Turek shuddered. But what happens when those connections spread beyond Earth? When they start forging bonds with other species in the galaxy? 14 Rack was silent for a long moment. He knew the answer, but it was one he was reluctant to voice. Humanity's power lay in their ability to adapt, to learn, to grow, but also in their ability to integrate. If they were allowed to spread unchecked, they wouldn't just dominate the galaxy. They would redefine it. The Narlithian Chronicle floated silently above Earth, its hull shimmering under the dim light of Sol. Inside, 14 Rack and Turek sat in their observation chamber, staring at the accumulated data displayed in vivid holograms. It had taken weeks of study and analysis, but the picture of humanity's potential was now undeniably clear. Yet, with clarity came an unsettling realization. A tipping point had been reached. We have enough, Turek said, breaking the silence. His voice trembled with uncertainty. We should depart and deliver our findings to the Galactic Assembly. Enough? 14 Rack replied, his mandibles twitching in agitation. We barely scratched the surface. There is more to uncover, more to understand. Turek hesitated, then gestured to the screen where a new video played. It showed a bustling spaceport under construction in a desert region of Earth. Enormous modular spacecraft were being assembled by human workers and robotic systems, but that wasn't the most astonishing part. What are they doing? 14 Rack asked as he leaned closer. They're building generational starships, Turek said, his voice barely above a whisper. They plan to leave their star system. Soon. 14 Rack's heart sank. He had suspected this moment would come, but to see it unfolding in real time filled him with dread. The implications were staggering. This changes everything, 14 Rack said, his tone grim. The Assembly must know about this immediately. If humanity leaves their star system, they will rewrite the balance of the galaxy. No species will be safe. Turek nodded but hesitated. And what will they decide, 14 Rack? Do you think they'll leave humanity alone after hearing our report? Or will this lead to intervention? 14 Rack's gaze fell to the planet below. The humans were an enigma, capable of acts of unparalleled violence and destruction but also extraordinary compassion and creativity. It was a duality that defied simple categorization. They will demand intervention, 14 Rack said after a long pause. Humanity's potential for growth, for expansion. It's too dangerous for the Assembly to ignore. That night, as 14 Rack prepared the final report for transmission, an alert sounded on the ship's console. One of the drones had been detected, something 14 Rack had thought impossible given the advanced cloaking technology the Narlithian Chronicle employed. What's happening? Turek asked, rushing to the console. 14 Rack's claws worked quickly over the controls. One of the drones was exposed during its reconnaissance. The humans have captured it? Turek's eyes widened in alarm. Do you think they'll reverse engineer it? Learn of our presence? Unlikely, 14 Rack said, though his tone betrayed his concern. The drone is programmed to self-destruct if tampered with. But this, he gestured to the screen showing the humans examining the drone. This is another reminder of their capabilities. They detected us, something no other species has ever done. The drone's feed cut out moments later, its failsafe activating. The humans looked startled, but they didn't panic. Instead, they began analyzing the fragments left behind, their curiosity undeterred. They will learn from this, 14 Rack said, his voice heavy. They always do. The final phase of their observation brought one last chilling revelation. Humanity's interconnectedness, their relentless curiosity, and their ability to adapt to anything thrown their way were not just tools, they were weapons. The humans themselves had begun to suspect this truth. 14 Rack reviewed intercepted communications from Earth's leaders and scientists. Discussions about humanity's place in the universe were becoming increasingly common. Philosophers debated whether humanity's chaotic nature was a gift or a curse. Engineers speculated about what alien life might look like. And generals prepared for conflicts yet to come, drawing up contingency plans for scenarios that no other species could have anticipated. They know, 14 Rack said, staring at a transmission from a human think tank. Know what? Tarek asked. They know what they are, 14 Rack replied, his mandibles clicking softly. They know they're dangerous. One intercepted message stood out among the others, a recording of a human scientist addressing a gathering of political leaders. Our strength isn't in our weapons or our technology, the scientist said. It's in our ability to unite, to learn, to adapt. That's what makes us dangerous. And if there's intelligent life out there, they already know this. We must be ready. Tarek shuddered. They're preparing for us. No, 14 Rack said, his voice filled with an unsettling certainty. They're preparing for everything. The next day, the Narlithian Chronicle broke orbit, its mission complete. 14 Rack and Tarek sat in silence as the ship entered hyperspace, their findings encrypted and ready for delivery to the Galactic Assembly. Do you think they'll survive? Tarek asked finally. If the Assembly intervenes, I mean. If they decide to eliminate humanity before they spread further. 14 Rack considered the question carefully. He thought of the humans' resilience, their boundless curiosity, their capacity for both destruction and creation. He thought of their chaotic brilliance and the connections that bound them together. No, 14 Rack said at last. The question isn't whether they'll survive. He turned to Tarek, his eyes dark with foreboding. The question is whether we will. The Narlithian Chronicle vanished into the stars, leaving Earth untouched, for now. Below, the humans continued their work, oblivious to the silent observers who had come and gone. But their preparations continued. Their journey into the cosmos had only just begun, and with it, a new chapter in the galaxy's history. For better or worse, humanity was rising. And nothing could stop them.